to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need to announce that the meeting is being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And as we do, if we could remember in our thoughts and prayers, the Texera family from Whitman who had the tragic accident in Abington. And also the family of Jim McDonald, who some of you may know was worked in physical education in the school system for a long time. Those people passed away within the past week. I'd like approval of bill and payroll warrants. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now's the public forum. It's the time for anyone to speak who has like to speak on something that's not on the agenda. It's all the same thing?
Yeah.
First item of business is the report on the aggregation program with the representative from Colonial Power.
Great.
And you are?
My name is Bernie Lynch, and I'm here on behalf of Colonial Power. I actually am a separate, I think you all have the PowerPoint slides that we sent along for informational purposes. I'm actually, by way of introduction, the Community Paradigm Associates. My background is in municipal government. I served as a town manager and as a city manager here in the Commonwealth for several decades, and I'm now going off and doing work on a number of different projects, but including in that is electric aggregation, working with Colonial Power Group. They're the real player here in terms of the project that you're going to be working on through the Old Colony Planning Commission, which was the one that coordinated, the group that coordinated the procurement of the aggregation consultant for the region. Colonial Power is the largest aggregation consultant in the state. There are approximately 80 communities, thereabouts. It changes almost daily nowadays with regards to communities that have done aggregation, but Colonial represents 42 of those communities. So they're the largest provider of consulting services, and you can see by the listing of the communities that they serve, they go from very small communities to the fourth largest being the city of Lowell. The real feature of Colonial Power is that they customize what they do for the community based upon what the community wants with regards to its electricity. So what exactly is aggregation? I'm assuming that there are a number of people out in the listening, watching on cable that aren't quite sure what this is, so I'll just do a quick rundown. I think the best way to look at it is many of us remember back when we had telephone service. You got your telephone service from New England Telephone, and they did all of your telephone service. The government stepped in and broke up that monopoly and gave people an opportunity to choose other providers for their long-distance service and other providers for telephone service in general. Well, similarly, here in Massachusetts in the 1990s, the legislature and the governor worked together to pass a deregulation bill with regards to electricity and natural gas, which essentially broke up the means in which electricity was delivered. You had your major utilities, Unitil, which is a relatively small one, but Eversource and National Grid, that at one point in time both generated the electricity and transmitted that electricity to the homes and businesses here in the state. What the deregulation did was essentially said that they would now just transmit the electricity. They would have the wires, the poles, and they would go out and buy electricity and make that available to people in what's known as the default rate or basic service. But it gave people the opportunity to also go out and procure electricity on their own. So you can now, as consumers, we can go out and sign up with a party to provide electricity for us. And it gets carried over those same national grid wires and through those poles, or with those poles, and it's billed through National Grid, but the electricity is actually coming from somewhere else. Now, those organizations that do that, those businesses that do that, oftentimes sign people up with teaser rates and get them signed up, and then the rates go up, and there are penalties if you break the contract, and they're longer-term contracts. It isn't necessarily the most pro-consumer choice that people have. The law also provided, though, that communities could aggregate, and that's what we're doing here, is that they could act on behalf of their residents and their small businesses to actually go out and arrange for the procurement of power that people would be able to take advantage of. Now, because they were looking for the best possible rate, the way the law is structured, and this is a key point with aggregation that we are always quick to point out because it's an issue that people need to know up front, what they required is that everyone that's in that community that do this is automatically enrolled. If they're in the basic service or default rate, they're automatically enrolled in the aggregation program, but they have to be given the opportunity to opt out. So it's an opt-out program. So, but what we're seeing is there are a number of benefits that come from aggregation. And again, in the PowerPoint that we sent on to you, we've listed a number of these. And I just want to focus on the big ones. The first is choice. Although people could go out and use one of these alternative providers, by and large, they didn't have much in the way of choice. You signed up, you got your power from National Grid, and generally you were just getting that rate that they charged. So choice is a key benefit of aggregation. The other is stability. What we're seeing, and I think if you look at your own electric bills here in Whitman over the last few years, you can have rates as high as 16 cents a kilowatt hour in the winter, and then lowered down to about 9 or 10 cents in the summer, and then spike back up in the next winter, and it's always going up and down depending upon what the market is doing. So what you can do with aggregation is you can flatten that out so that people aren't seeing those spikes and those dips in the pricing. What everyone truly likes about aggregation, however, is the cost savings that you can achieve through this. By going out to competitive bid, essentially the utilities are allowed to bid out electricity for the basic service 2 days a year by regulation. Instead, through community aggregation, the communities go out and bid 200 plus days a year, and they can time the market, they can watch the market. If the market isn't working to their advantage at a particular point in time, they simply don't sign an agreement. And they can wait for another time to actually do that. And Colonial has, in fact, advised communities to do that. The town of Ashland, in fact, is a community that went into aggregation a few years back and chose not to move forward based upon the advice of Colonial Power and waited some time before they actually moved forward with that. But we are seeing that rates can be substantially lower. I mentioned that the city of Lowell does aggregation through Colonial Power. A couple of years ago, when the rates were at 16 cents a kilowatt hour for the winter, the city of Lowell had rates of 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Substantial savings for the residents of that city. Right now, National Grid has a rate going out for the summer. It's all-time lows. It's coming in at 8 cents a kilowatt hour. That's starting in May. But in fact, there are communities out there getting power right now in the 7s. So as you go through this process, you won't be hitting the market probably until the fall, so you probably won't be seeing rates quite like that. But Colonial Power will be working with Whitman and the other communities in the Old Colony Planning Commission area to get the best possible rates at that point in time. And you're given choices. As, again, it comes down to choices. You're given the opportunity to do 6-month contracts, 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts. Whatever the community determines is in the best interests of the residents and the small businesses here in Whitman. Speaking of small businesses, it's a great economic development tool. Energy is a major driver of, or major cost issue for businesses here in this region of the country. So those communities that can provide lower rates are in fact able to benefit those businesses that help their growth. It's very much a pro-consumer program. It's all very transparent. You can opt out right at the outset if you so choose. You can then also opt in. You can opt out at any point. And with the way the Colonial sets up these programs, you can also opt in at any point in time. That's a little bit different than some of the other aggregation consultants. So we're very pleased that Old Colony chose Colonial Power. But you do have that opportunity to opt out and opt in depending upon what you see in your best interest. You also have the benefit of the professional expertise of Colonial Power and the local control that you get through the local government. Those communities that wish to do so can choose what level of green you're going to be. By regulation, you have to be somewhat green, so any bid out does have a portion of it that's renewable energy, but in fact there are communities that are going 100% green. The town of Holliston, for instance. Actually, the city of Lowell went all green, but the town of Holliston right now has a rate of 8.9 cents a kilowatt hour flat over the entire year, and they're at a all-green product. So you do have that. Again, those are choices that the local government can make for its particular town. And then in terms of the future, aggregation, although it's been around since 1997, is still evolving. There are communities now that are putting a small adder onto their rate so that they can fund an energy management program for their community. In the future, you can use aggregation to help you make renewable energy projects more feasible. You can also, what the Cape is doing, the Cape Cod Compact, is they're actually accessing the conservation money that the utilities otherwise collect, and they're determining how that's going to be used in their own region. Communities are looking to do that in the future as well. So it's really a wide array of opportunities that aggregation provides, and at the outset, though, I would suggest that you simply take part of the basic program of aggregation where you are able to go out and get those best possible prices, get those choices for people, and take advantage of those opportunities. And then down the road, we can look at some other choices that the town may wish to make. The steps in the process, I believe you have a town meeting warrant article in which this is there. You do need the local acceptance of the statute to begin this process. Assuming that passes, and it has in every community really that it's been put before, Colonial would then come back and work with the town administration and the board to put together an aggregation plan. It's essentially a boilerplate document, but it gets to be customized to what you need. You adopt that. With that adoption, it would then be sent on to the Department of Energy Resources for their comment, and then goes to the Department of Public Utilities, where hearings are held, and the process moves forward. It takes a couple months to go through that process, and then once that's taken care of, once that's approved, the Colonial can then go out to bid and bring prices back to you, depending upon those decisions you have to make as to green energy, term, and so on and so forth. And then you make the decision of whether to proceed and how to proceed. And then all of the payer notifications, all of the management of the opt-out aspects are handled by Colonial on your behalf, and then the energy starts to flow. So again, if you're looking at getting out there in the fall, you'd probably be looking at a November or a December point in time that the energy actually starts to flow for you. As far as issues to flag for you, opt-out is the big one. The other issue that many communities are concerned about is what type of staff commitment is necessary, what type of tax dollars. There are no tax dollars used. There's very little staff time. This is all really handled by Colonial, by the aggregation consultant. The opt-out, as we talked about, is provided by law, but we do arrange it so that you can opt out and opt in at choice. Billing remains the same. Outage management remains the same. The electricity is all still the same. It's just coming from a different source than National Grid. Education is a key part of how this process works. That's where I get more involved in this program, working with the town and working with Colonial to actually provide the public information to the residents and the businesses. The goal here is really to get the cheapest power for you, the best deal for the town, and that is my whole presentation. I went as quickly as I could for you.
No,
because I
that's
know I
great,
looked at
great,
your
great.
agenda. I know you've got a lot going on tonight.
No, thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I do have one,
Brian.
and I was just trying to find it, because I saw an article today about the National Grid rates dropping dramatically, and
Right.
the numbers that you quoted, were those
The 8
in
cents?
connection with that article?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those rates just came out. They're at 8. There are communities they've gone out recently, and they've gotten about 8.5 cents. And so initially you say, well, that's not that good because it's coming in at 8. But people have to realize that those rates are going to go up probably to 10, 11 cents in the winter. So flattened out over the entire year, they're still beneficial rates. But there's also the town of Tewksbury, for instance, just went out, and they had they're coming in at about 7.8 cents a kilowatt hour for 6 months. Then they go up to 9, I think it's 9.2 for 6 months. So it's still going to be below the basic service the entire time.
Yeah, I think I looked at my bill last week, and I think the default number was $13.99.
Yep.
I think it was, so.
Right.
These sound like great numbers.
Yep.
How often and how frequently can someone opt in or out?
As many times as they want. So, there aren't that many people that really take advantage of that or utilize that. They get the good rate and they basically stay with that rate. But if people want to sort of play the market, they can do that. They can opt out when the rates are a little bit. So, for instance, if it was 8.2 cents and it dropped to 8, they could opt out and they come back in the fall if they wanted to.
Great. Anyone else?
I just, so with outage management, right now we call National Grid, you get the recording. Is the procedure the same?
Yeah, we kind of improve upon that, but
Okay.
it's not. It doesn't get any worse.
Yeah.
It's again, it's just electricity that's you're buying. You'll be buying, for instance, from conceivably a hydro plant somewhere or some type of a natural gas facility somewhere that has excess capacity, and they're selling it off into the grid, which the National Grid transmits out. So it's all the same.
It's all the same? So
Yep.
they'd call National Grid?
They call National Grid, and they'll get the same bill. It is not a separate bill. It'll still be the National Grid bill, except that instead of saying basic rate or default rate, it will say Whitman Community Choice.
And of course, National Grid remains our distributor. That just doesn't change.
Right.
Okay. Bernie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
So I guess we'll be seeing more of each other once the town meeting okays the,
Yeah, but we'll be back again and spending some time together.
Okay.
Quality time.
okay, quality.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to act on license renewals for the following license holders for the period May 1st, 2016 through April 30th, 2017, subject to the submission of renewal paperwork, renewal fees, and current tax status. They're in the following categories: fuel storage licenses, junk collectors licenses, junk dealers licenses, and pool table licenses. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Are there any questions about any of the vendors in this area, these areas? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda, and Scott, you will have those to sign. Next item on the agenda is to vote to place the following question on the May 21st, 2016 annual town election. Should that be May 2nd?
On the May 21st,
Oh, annual town election, I'm sorry. Okay, Val.
That is the 20th.
That is the 21st. Shall the town of Whitman be allowed to assess an additional $1,762,588 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding a portion of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating expense assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2016. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I actually have a couple of questions. For me, it was, maybe I missed something because I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I don't know if I get all this information, but this 1.7, is this coming directly from the school committee, their vote, or is how much they needed?
Yes. The school committee voted to increase the local assessment 20.15%. That represents a 3.5% increase inside the levy and the balance of the increase outside the levy. The increase outside the levy is $3 million shared with Whitman and Hanson, and based on student population, our share becomes $1,762,588. The town meeting will presumably be voting on an article that appropriates that money subject to an approval at the ballot box of the 2.5 override. I did do a little bit of legwork on this. One of the things that I noted last year when we did the capital exclusion is it hit everybody in the third and fourth quarter because the first 2 quarters were estimated bills. I've found that the town is allowed, if a vote is taken prior to July 1st and sufficiently early enough to allow the assessor to plan it, if the vote passes at town meeting and passes at the election, the assessor can vote to add that money to the assessments beginning with the first quarterly bill, so people don't get 2 small bills and then suddenly get hit with the value of the override over 2 bills rather than 4. It's the same money,
Right, to
but
spread
it
out.
allows you to pay it over the 4 quarters rather than the 2.
Do we know what that average assessment would be?
Yes, it's $1.24 per $1,000 of assessment.
On average, that would be,
3 to 500 bucks?
Well, I believe the median house in Whitman is 288. So if you take that number, as often as I've crunched these numbers, I should have them on the top of my head.
Probably not the only thing you've been doing.
So it would be $357 on a house worth $288,000. But that is in addition to the normal assessment.
Right.
So you have to remember that.
Yeah. The other question I had was, because some folks have been discussing this, and what I wondered was, is this a hard and fast number that it's either a yay or a nay, or is this something that can be, whether it be a town meeting or through us, give the voters an option? Because I'm all for putting this on the ballot to let the people decide, because 150 people at town meeting and maybe 1,000 or 1,500 at an election box is much better for you get a better picture, I think. So, but I think that it would be nice to give them a choice.
Short answer,
No, right?
yes, it's an all or nothing. The town, in order for the town to act on this, the Board of Selectmen have to certify the ballot question no less than 35 days before the election. So this is our opportunity to vote to put it on the ballot. Only the selectmen can place an override on a ballot. It can't be done by town meeting. What town meeting can do is condition that money. As I understand Chapter 71, when a region submits a budget, you have only 2 options, yes or no. You don't have the option to modify the budget. You don't have the option to reduce it. In the past, when we have received assessments that were more than the two towns could manage, and the two towns met and voted a lesser number, then the region came back and voted that number, and the assessment became a fact. That is something they could do, but not if you had a menu or alternatives. I view putting a menu on an override question for a regional vote to be interfering with the school's ability to set their numbers. We get to say yes or no, not here's how we want you to spend your money. We can have those conversations during the budget process.
Right.
But once the school committee, who's elected by the Whitman and Hanson voters, makes a determination on what their budget should be, then it's up to the town to respond one way or the other.
So the town meeting, townspeople would have actually two chances if they did not like this. They could argue at town meeting to shoot it down, the number.
Well, once the ballot question is on the ballot, it doesn't come off. So
It would then
in
be-
that
they
scenario,
voted down.
if town meeting, I can't imagine the town meeting would reject this and then people would show up at the ballot box and vote for it. The other side is a more likely possibility. I've never seen it. But under the Prop 2.5 statute, once an override is voted, it's good until your tax rate is set. So if it were to fail at town meeting but be approved at the ballot, the sponsor, which in this case would be Whitman Hanson, would have until September or October to come to the town, ask for a town meeting, and convince people to spend that money. If the money is not appropriated by the time we set the tax rate, the initiative dies. On the other hand, if we vote yes on town meeting and we don't get a majority vote at the election, then the appropriation is canceled because it was contingent on that vote. I understand Hanson is looking at a menu, and I really, frankly, I have no idea how that would work.
Wreak havoc.
I believe they're going to be discussing that tonight with their town council and school council. But it's something,
School council's opinion reflects exactly what Frank has just been saying.
well, it's the law. I mean,
Right.
it's not ambiguous.
Yeah, and just so I get this right, I'm really trying to let the folks know at home and the options. And let's just say the town meeting gives a thumbs up and then it passes at the ballot box. The school district gets that money for their budget, but next year, that money is open to everybody.
Legally, from the standpoint of what can we appropriate, I'm not going to say legally, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
From the point of what we can appropriate, every town meeting can appropriate money up to the levy limit. So it is possible that a town meeting in a subsequent year could say, hey, we don't want to spend all this money on education, we want to use some of it somewhere else. We've never done it. We have never, in all the years, even in the years when we were only partially regionalized, we have never, well, we've only had a couple overrides too, I think. We've never gone back and taken that money and put it somewhere else. I don't think we've ever not looked at last year's budget for the region as a starting point. There may be a year or two where we level funded them, but we've never cut their budget.
Hey Frank, this is gonna be all explained at town meeting, I hope.
I'm sure it'll be
Right,
discussed.
it needs to be. I mean, people need to know, I'm for putting this right to the ballot. I mean, town meeting should vote to put it to the ballot and let all the taxpayers in Whitman decide on how they want their tax dollars spent. And then it's done. If it's up or down, that's what it is. We have elected officials and us that run our schools, that we put in office to do the best thing for our kids. And if this is what they've decided, then this is what they've decided. And you either vote the amount of money up or down. It's to whoever. But to not have it go to a ballot box is wrong. It needs to go to all the people, all the voters in Whitman. It needs to.
Just without dragging this thing out, I think it would be helpful perhaps to go to your warrant, and you'll see the language for the appropriation toward the back of the warrant.
The article number? Right here. 35?
On Article 55, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate outside the levy limit of Proposition 2.5 so-called, $1,762,588 to be added to Article 2, Budget Line 175, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating expense, voted this date, meaning the date of town meeting, thereby approving the district's submitted budget for fiscal year 2017, provided that this additional appropriation shall be contingent on the approval of a Proposition 2.5 levy limit override under General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, small g. That's the contingent appropriation. And we chose to do it this way rather than putting it on Article 2 to keep the process clean so people can see what is being asked for. The superintendent, in preparing for this, said they wanted to prepare two numbers. One was a level service budget and the other being the success budget.
So what number will be on Article 2? Same number as last year?
The 3.5% increase in the assessment. I think it's 400,000
Okay.
change. So if the override doesn't pass, we will have an operational increase, but it'll simply be level service.
So at town meeting, that number for Article 2, it should pass, so at least they have working monies?
Yes, Article 2 will always be voted before those other
Right.
articles are. So once that vote is taken, the budget for Whitman-Hanson has been voted with an operational increase of roughly 3.5% assessed to the two towns. Ours is slightly higher, ours is 4 because of student population.
Right. And then if in fact the override does pass, does that 1.7 plus that 400?
Yes, it's added to that
Added to
for
it, okay.
Yeah, what the school committee did was to split what they needed. They decided what they needed for their students to succeed, and they split it up between a 3.5% increase, which we've been used to paying, and the rest of this money, which is what they believe they actually need to do the job that they need to do. So we can say yes or no to, we can vote up or down the school budget in two forms, twice.
Right.
Once the 3.5% and once the override. And then if we vote the override, it just puts it on the ballot for May 21st. But we have to do this tonight first.
Mr.
That-
Chairman,
Right.
there is a member of the school committee in the audience. I was wondering if you want to ask him, do you want to chime in on any of it?
Basically, that's what we were asking for. We have to go in with a game plan, like Al said. We have to be level funded. And
Dan, they can't hear you at home without the mic.
you know, Article 2, we do have to be level funded, so we have to put that in as 3.5, just to meet our bare bones again. What the school committee, superintendent, everybody wants to try to do with the override is get us back to where we were a few years ago, where we had languages, the arts, all this stuff that we've been cutting away, and we're just down to the bare bones. We've been juggling things for years up at this school. You know, you can wait for retirements, then you hire somebody new and it starts over. That's been cushioning. We can't cushion anymore. We're out of the shell game. State doesn't pay us where we were promised as a region.
Right.
You know, we were 70-something%, we're down to 50-something%. Basically, DESI's saying we're not paying our fair share. So by us not paying our fair share, not getting up to a certain level, they're not gonna pay us anymore. So the school's gonna keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding unless we do something about it. You know, like you're saying, vote the level thing in there, and, you know, it should go up to the ballot, because, you know, 150 people shouldn't be deciding on such a big thing. Let all the taxpayers decide and put it to the override. But that's the goal. Is the first one is just to keep us in business. The second one is what we want to try to do and get
yeah,
it
but
in there.
to be fair, it's to sort of keep you in business.
Sort of keep us in business, yes.
That's right.
You know, we're still bare bones,
Right.
but that's what the override's supposed to do, is help us get back to where we were. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to place that question on the ballot?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, act on a motion to declare under MGL C-44, Section 31, that a state of emergency existed on February 25th, 2016, with respect to the imminent collapse of a building structure at 215 South Avenue, and to acknowledge that the building commissioner acted on his authority to demolish the structure to make safe the area of the building. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any
This is the
questions?
bad penny that won't go away.
Yes.
DOR has authorized us to deficit spend for this expense, provided the Board of Selectmen vote this specific language that references the statutory provisions for emergency spending. And we do have an article on the special to pay for that cost, so the deficit spending will only be a short window. Otherwise, it would have to go on the recap for next year.
And of course, we will be recouping this once, if that property is ever sold.
Presumably.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Town Clerk Don Varley to appoint checkers for the annual and special town meeting to be held on Monday, May 2nd, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Take action to appoint Alexis Andrews to the position of Board of Health Representative, South Shore Recycling Cooperative, for a 3-year term through June 30th, 2016, in order to fill an existing vacancy.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Take action to appoint Alexis Andrews to the position of Municipal Coordinator, Right to Know alternate, in order to fill an existing vacancy.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the resignation of Erica Erskine from the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer effective March 3rd, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the resignation of Brian Hickey from the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer effective March 16th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the resignation of Gregory Enos from the position of Assistant Town Administrator effective April 12th, 2016.
So moved with regret.
Is there a second?
with regret. Second with regret.
Well, we get 2 regrets. We're going to go for 3 regrets, 4 regrets?
Why don't we make it
Unanimous
unanimous?
regret. Unanimous, profound regret.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
If we voted not, you mean he couldn't resign?
Pretty much.
I would be
Chain him to the
remiss if
table.
I did not comment at this time. Greg has been with us almost 4 years, and he's accomplished a lot in that time. We see the energy improvements that we've dealt with, the grant for, actually 2 grants, for the Green Communities Act, and he's done a lot of legwork for other things we're working on, including the personnel manual, and we have recently been notified that we're going to be signing a compact with the state that is going to allow us to receive funding to complete the second phase of the personnel piece, which is to do a wage and compensation survey. So, thank you, Greg, for all of the work you did. I wish you a lot of luck in your new position in Ashland, and your longer commute. You can get, I understand they still have books on tape.
You know what, it's a longer commute, but it's a nicer ride.
True. So,
You're not going through downtown, huh?
You're not going through downtown Brockton. Which was not a knock on Brockton, and anyway.
You'll miss the beautiful casino.
I don't know, you don't know what they said about us last night.
Well, that's true, I understand that we were a
We were the
topic,
topic of discussion.
we were, would you like to fill a, this is sort of a update to our discussion on wastewater a couple of
Sure.
weeks ago.
I received a call yesterday from one of the city councilors asking me why the town of Whitman was on the agenda for the city council meeting. And the why being more than it was obvious it was to talk about the sewer system, but why tonight? And I said, I really have no idea, but let me give you the history. And I went through the problems we've had with billing. The first bill coming in at 1.2 million, and after being audited was $370,000. And at that point, we set some limits and standards because
That's
it
a
was
$700,000 mistake on their part.
they didn't view it as a mistake.
What did they view it as?
They viewed it as
Extortion.
our fair share
Yeah.
of paying for all of the expenses of the sewer plant. However, our agreement signed 21 years ago said that we were not responsible for those expenses related to increased capacity. And what happened is all of that stuff was packed into that bill. At that point, it became obvious to me that we needed to audit each bill, and I set aside $3,000 to $5,000 a year to audit the bill. That sounds like a lot of money.
Let me
But-
get this straight. It's costing us $3,000 to $5,000 a year to make sure that
keep them
Brockton's bill is honest.
Yes.
Okay.
And while that sounds like a lot of money, we're
Money
now
well spent,
talking about
yeah.
bills that are approaching $600,000 a year. And I just don't have confidence that what we're getting is in full compliance with our agreement. We did reach an interim agreement with the city solicitor and the city with respect to how we would be treated on future billings. But Brockton bills us a year in arrears, which makes part of it difficult. In the last 3 years, we've received one bill, and we couldn't resolve that bill, which is what led us to where we were last month. And once that bill was dissected and we went back and explained all the reasons why we weren't willing to pay some of those charges, we reached an agreement. But more importantly, we reached an agreement on how we would be treated as a user in the system. We are not a user of the Brockton wastewater system, only its plant. We have built all of our infrastructure. We have a pipe that goes all the way through the city, which we maintain, except for the last 160 feet. And they won't let us build out that last 160 feet. And I respect that, but I'm not willing to be treated as a common user because of it. So we've managed to get the 13 bill resolved. We're still
This
waiting.
is fiscal 13. This is
Fiscal
three years
13.
ago.
We're still waiting for fiscal 14 and fiscal 15.
They haven't been issued yet.
No, and the reason they were held was twofold. One, we didn't have an agreement on how the bill was to be prepared. And once they bill it, it starts a 30-day clock that accrues interest. So we've agreed that they're going to review those numbers, send them to us. We will audit them. In our special town meeting, I have a request to appropriate $612,000 plus the portion of the bill for the FY13 that we haven't paid, which I think is $200, in order to have enough money on hand to make the payments for fiscal 14, 15, and 16. So if we run into a problem, it won't be because we don't have the funds that need to be raised by town meeting. And that's been a part of the problem. So we're planning ahead. We're going to set the money aside, and then it's going to be up to them to bill us properly. So I have no idea what occurred yesterday, except I was assured if it was an issue or a problem, I would receive a call today, and I received no call.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda under old business, the updated alcohol enforcement compliance check policy.
The reason we have asked that this policy...
This is a policy that we voted a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
But we need to make a couple of changes.
We made a couple of changes in discussions with the investigators from ABCC. They provided us with a pretty clear outline of how they approach and how they would view our approach to compliance. And there's no point in us having a policy that doesn't meet all of their points, Because if we do, then we're at risk for not being able to support the decisions.
Would be in the
we
same
make.
shape we were a month ago when we had no policy.
Correct. So those minor changes are presented in order to ensure that what we do is consistent with what the ABCC will view. I have talked to Chief Benton about the updates to the policy, and the chief has also offered to deliver these policies to all the license holders once the board signs off on it.
Personally.
Personally. He's our
Well,
alcohol
as a liquor
inspector.
agent, I figure, just one more piece of insulation.
One
Well,
more
yeah.
rock in the knapsack, right?
And it's, ironic that we will be discussing it this evening because we received notice from Chief Benton that last week, the ABCC visited Whitman and found 4 establishments in violation of the policies.
And who are they?
And the violation was serving minors, if I recall correctly. Is that correct? The 4 agencies were, let me see, the Whitman Convenience Store, which is right up the street, Temple Liquors, which is up the street the other way, Jamie's down Route 18,
And
and O'Toole's, surprisingly enough. They were in violation. So when the chief delivers a set of policies and procedures to O'Toole's, I'll be smiling somewhere in the background somewhere. One of the things that the chief might note to those particular people is that there is a section in there on progressive discipline which gives us guidelines as to what kind of penalties to exact on the first offense, second offense, third offense. Well, for those 4 in particular, it would be their second offense. So they should be made those 4 should be made aware of that we take this seriously.
And of course, the whatever ramifications and discipline will occur through ABCC, not this board,
Right.
but it triggers the meter.
Now, should we receive a letter from all the establishments that the policy is given? A letter saying that they have received it?
There will be an acknowledgement form with each of them.
Yeah, it's part of the delivery
Right,
service.
because I don't want them to say, well, I never got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
All the more reason for me to hand deliver it. It's kind of tough to say I didn't.
Need a motion for the
do you remember me? Yeah. Can we have a motion to amend the policy?
I would make that motion.
Second. Okay, you have the policy in front of you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Around the board, Frank?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier to the chairman, the community compact contract has to be signed between the town and the governor's office. The lieutenant governor typically comes out to sign those contracts. She is going to be in Abington on April 21st to sign compacts with Abington, Hanover, and Whitman. Our chairman will not be available that day to go to Abington to sign that contract, so we will need a vote of the board to authorize another member of the board
What's the date?
This sounds so official.
to sign that agreement.
It's like
They
a
were
resolution,
specific.
a resolution.
It is a resolution.
Yes.
They were very specific about it.
Or yourself, he said,
What date is it?
What?
or as town administrator.
April?
April 21st, at what time?
3:30.
3:30 to 4:30.
3:30 to 4? Dan, as the vice chair, are you available?
I guess so. I don't see anything on my agenda. I guess I'm going.
There is now.
Is there would someone like to move a move a resolution to authorize Dan to
I'll make
attend?
that motion.
April
Okay,
21st.
second.
resolved that Selectman Daniel Salvucci be appointed to sign a contract between the Commonwealth and the town of Whitman.
That's where, in Abington's where? Town Hall?
Yes.
Second.
To a second. Any discussion?
Can I vote no? No, I'm only kidding.
This really hurts. I would really like to be there. for
I
this
know
because
that.
I mean, I can't be.
I was at, I was at a, what was it? It was a breakfast, a legislative breakfast down in Middleborough months ago, when the lieutenant governor was there to sign compacts with some other people in that area. And I came back and asked Frank, how come we're not involved in this? And so there's been some motion lately to get us involved. And so I'm really happy that this is happening, and I'm really happy that Dan is able to go instead of myself.
Oh, you're not.
But that's,
You wanna go?
He'll send you a
But
picture.
yeah, send me a picture that you put in the paper, that'd be great. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Enjoy.
It's on my agenda.
Anything else, Frank?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, Scott?
Nothing.
Lisa?
I do have just one thing. A few months back, I don't know if everyone remembers, but folks were receiving phone calls, recorded phone calls, stating that a lawsuit has been filed against them by the IRS, and to contact them. Well, that was a scam. I received a recorded phone call stating that a lawsuit has been filed against me from Social Security. If anyone out there is receiving
Ironically.
phone calls, these are scams, do not respond. Nobody files a lawsuit against you and calls you to let you know about it. There are procedures that are followed. So just want to give folks a little bit of information. Please do not get upset by these phone calls. They are scams. Do not respond to them. Just delete it. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. I received 2 of those calls last week. I called Scott when I received the first one to let him know that there's some monkey business going on out there. The calls are from Waco, Texas. And then I won't repeat what I said to Scott after that. But the person that I was speaking to didn't sound like he came from Waco, Texas, if you know what I mean. And
But you had the big gavel from there, didn't you?
yeah. So I called Scott. And then I got a phone call from Washington, D.C., actually, the next day, with the same, but it was a voice manipulated call. It wasn't a real person.
Yeah, caller ID means nothing today.
Yeah.
Anyone can spoof a number so it looks like they're calling
Right.
from
Yep.
DC, when in reality they're not. And sometimes they can capture a number and assign it until the phone company
Yeah.
realizes they have and then reassigns
Yeah, they're
it.
probably calling from Hanson. There's a Quonset hut in Hanson that has all of these people in it that are
We'll be getting a
making these
declaration
phone
of war
calls
tomorrow.
everywhere.
So we're fighting Brockton and Hampton.
We're gonna have to
Two-border
put
war
up
now.
a wall.
Well, yeah, that's what we need, a wall.
Put up a
I-
wall.
oh,
Put up a wall.
And Brockton can pay for it.
this is not funny, I had a dream the other night that,
All good speeches.
no, I had a dream the other night that candidate Trump had been elected president. And
call that a dream?
almost immediately, this is in the dream, it seems so logical. We had annexed Mexico and Canada. So therefore, there was no need for a wall.
Yeah, makes sense.
Our trade balance was way up. Made sense as far as Mexico's concerned, I suppose. I couldn't figure out why Canada, but there's, all that space between us and Alaska, we should fill it in with America, right? Make America big again, that's what it is.
I think you should lay off the spicy food.
Come to think of it, it was right after Easter, yes. It was right after our Russian-Ukrainian Easter. It was that kielbasa that did it. Other than that silliness, I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I do have one thing, on a bit of a somber note,
That was somber.
yeah. A classmate and a close friend of mine passed away on Good Friday. He was a longtime Whitman resident. His name is John Gaturna, and he passed away unexpectedly. And he was a longtime volunteer for youth sports in the town, and well known, well liked. And it was a sad day. And I just wanted to personally, express my sadness and support for the family. And I know there's a lot of kids out there that know who he was. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Brian. We need to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than the professional competence of an individual. And also exception 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel.
So moved?
Second, yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll return in open session only to adjourn.